All right, so here we go. So we're going to continue our lessons in algebra today. We're going to be talking about division, but let's recap a little bit about what we talked about yesterday. Remember we were talking about multiplication, and we said that we can multiply when you're multiplying terms. Which parts of these things can I actually do the multiplication? The constants, exactly. Any constants can be multiplied together. So 4 times 4 is 16 times 3 is
42. 5, 8.
You'll get there. Yeah, keep counting. That's all right. It's okay. I picked big numbers. It's okay. Now, can you actually multiply letters together? No, because we don't know what they are. But we can simplify the operation, right? So if I take this C times this C, they are the same letter, right? So what is that going to give me?
C squared.
C squared, or C to the second power. Excellent. Right? Pardon me? 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 3, right? All right. Now, what about this D? Does it have anything that can be multiplied with?
No.
So what's going to happen to it?
C squared D.
Yeah, it's just going to come down. So our completed answer is 48C squared D. We can always multiply the numbers. Any variables that are the same, we just count out how many we have, and that becomes the, what's that thing called? The index or exponent. What's the third word for it?
Wait. Power.
Power. There you go. Sorry, we didn't wait. Okay. All right. All good there? Now, also we learned, and we're going to expand today, that when you have a division, remember we're lazy in algebra. We don't like to write any symbols that we don't have to. So instead of writing A divided by B, how could I write that? Sure. A over B, exactly. And if you look at it, this symbol looks exactly like a fraction, doesn't it? The fraction bar actually came first. The symbol came later. So to write in algebra, to write division, we typically use a fraction bar. We also like to make that fraction bar flat, because if I want to say A divided by C plus D, I can't do this, because which part is being divided here? The A and the C, but that's not what this was saying, is it? It was saying divide the whole thing, and that's why we use the flat fraction bar, so we can make sure that we get everything inside that we need inside, yeah? Okay? Also remember that even though you don't see it, the top and bottom of a fraction are both enclosed in what?
Parentheses.
In parentheses or brackets, right? Hello, American. All right, so you've got to always remember that even though you don't see them, they're there. So if you're going to forget that, maybe you should write it. Is it going to hurt is it going to change anything if you do write it? Thank you. Anybody? Does it change it? Does it make it wrong if you do write it? No, it's not wrong if you do write it, and you need to write or do whatever it is that you need to do to make it work. Okay? So how'd that go? Did any of you work on your Education Perfect to work on those assignments? Yeah?
I almost finished.
Okay. Did y'all have any questions about any of those problems? Now remember, I'm going to give you those Education Perfect assignments. I'll still give you your math mates, but those math mates are now kind of secondary to your Education Perfect assignments. Those are the things I want you to work on. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
The Education Perfect thing that I got they had never mind. Sorry, I thought I had a whole list of things.
Well, there was a measurement one that had 5,000 assignments on it. I made that do, and it's gone. So
111 days.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, anyway, so I took that one off. Now the only thing that should be on your Education Perfect is the algebra. And then later when we do some reviewing on the patterns, because we're still going to have to do that, then that will be on there. But you'll see that when you look now on your Education Perfect, there's a start date. That's the day we do the lecture. So don't start them before we do the lecture, please, because otherwise you're going to be bored. Anyway, then there's a due date that's 7 days from the day we lecture. And you can turn it in late, but it will be for reduced credit. And that's now going to be your homework. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, you still get the mathsmates because your parents paid for them. And I do want you to work with them. Why is it so important to do mathsmates? What do you notice about, what's the very first thing you do on all of those?
Well, it's just basic facts, so it's...
Exactly. You're practicing basic facts. One of the problems that students have in mathematics is that we'll do something one day and you're like, oh yeah, I've got that. Then we do something different the next day and you're like, oh, I don't remember what we did last time, right? So they make a great way of keeping in practice, reviewing, because you don't want to just dump everything that you learned yesterday, right? Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at division with algebraic expressions. Why do I keep calling them algebraic?
I hate that one because it's algebra.
What? Yeah, and what makes it algebra? We have variables or letters in them, right? That's the only thing different. And they're expressions and not equations because they don't have what in them? They don't have equal symbols. Excellent. And you can call it an equal sign, but really, and I noticed that they do too on Education Perfect, but really those are mathematical symbols, not signs. Signs are those pluses and minuses, the positives and negatives. But I'll do it too. I learned it the same way. We're also going to see something else today that I cannot stand. It's a shortcut kind of word that really brings you trouble later in life. And I'm going to point it out. I can't avoid it because it's in the directions for your work, but I'm going to point it out. But I would prefer that you not use it. When you do use it, I won't say, no, that's wrong. I'll say, but what's really happening? Okay? Because a lot of times, think about it, when you're learning something, you learn shortcuts and tricks and little ways of doing things. But then later, you don't rely on them, right? Well, I think that you're mature enough at this point to not rely on those kinds of tricks. Okay? So we're going to talk about it. When you're talking about dividing with algebraic expressions, it's a process just like multiplication. And just like multiplication, the first part of every term is its what? Sign. Well, if the sign is the first part of a term, then when do you think you should work on the signs? First. Exactly. First things first, right? Okay? So always determine the sign. And just as a review, remember guys, when you're dividing, if they're both positive, the answer is going to stay positive. Be careful. If they're both negative, the answer is also going to be a positive, right? A negative divided by a negative makes a positive. But if one of them is negative and the other one's positive, and it doesn't matter which one, the answer is a negative, right? Okay? You're going to get some familiarity with the signs. Make sure you remember the signs. It's exactly the same rules for multiplication, right? Okay. What I don't want you to learn is two negatives make a positive. That's a horrible rule because it only works. That's the rule for multiply and divide. So what you should say is, when you're multiplying two negatives, you get a positive. Do you see the difference in those two sentences? Because two negatives do not always make a positive. When you're combining, that's not true, right? So you've got to be careful not to learn shortcuts that hurt you later. The second part of every term is its what? Starts with a C. Coefficient, right. And that's the next thing you're going to do. You'll divide the coefficients.
Does anyone else keep spelling sign with an H? I just want to spell with an H, and I can't get rid of it.
You'll practice. You'll get better. Okay? Yes. Of course. All right.
Isn't that one keep variables?
What now?
Is number 3 keep variables?
Well, we'll see. Hold on a minute. Okay. We'll divide the coefficients because numbers are always divide, right? 8 divided by 4 is going to give you a 2, right? Now, but what if I had 5 divided by 7? Can I divide a 5 by 7?
No.
No?
Yes, you can.
Can I? Well, I could turn it into a decimal, but that's not really division. So really, I can't divide it, so it's just going to stay the same. So not all numbers will divide. That's how we end up with fractions, right? The third step deals with the third part of the term, which is the what? Variable. Now, here's where it becomes, where our new work is and what we need to be familiar with, okay? And I'm going to write you the full algebraic rule, even though they don't in the lecture that we're going to talk about, because I want you to be familiar with what's happening, okay? The first thing is that anything divided by itself so in other words, if I say divided by itself, that means I'm taking A and dividing it by what? A, right? Table divided by table. Building divided by building. It doesn't matter. Because remember, division literally means how many times can I fit this thing inside of this other thing? And how many times can you fit something inside itself? One time. Okay? So anything divided by itself always equals 1. And we don't always have to write the ones. If we already have a number there, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you these in the example. I'm going to write it out the long way every time to show you what's happening. Okay? Guys? But the most common way of thinking of this is using the word cancel. Have you heard that before when you're dividing to cancel terms? It's a horrible thing to habit to get into, because what happens is you're going to be in trouble later. Now I'm going to show you, I'll show you something that'll make it make sense to you, so don't worry about it. Now, if they don't divide evenly, okay, if you have an index, right? Meaning that there are more C's than 1, right? So like C to the third really means you have how many C's? 3 of them, right? If you have an index, then what you're going to do is subtract the bottom index from the top one.
Is this what we shouldn't do?
This is what you should do.
Oh, okay.
You shouldn't cancel. You should think of it as subtracting come back here. You should think of it as subtracting. Sorry about that. Okay? And of course, you're going to keep the variable most of the time. You're not always going to do it, because if you divide it by itself, it turns into a what number?
1.
A 1. So there's no variable left, right? So sometimes you can divide things completely away to make ones, right? Okay. How does it look? Okay, so we can say keep the variable and subtract the indices. That's what this bit is telling you. But I wanted to give it to you in a little bit more detail first. Now we're going to look at lots of examples, and again, what Education Perfect is going to do is they're going to say cancel. But I want you not to say cancel. I want you to say anything divided by itself makes a what? 1. And do you need to write ones if you already have something? No. Okay? So that's what I want you to write. So let's look at, go to our Education Perfect and walk us through their lesson. Okay? So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to simplify division. So in algebra, we always write division as a fraction, and we looked at this yesterday. If it makes it easier to simplify the expressions that involve division, because if you have something that's spread out, it's more difficult to read. But if you have everything lined up, one thing right over the other, it's very easy to see what's happening, right? It's very easy to compare things when they're one right above the other. So here we have an algebraic expression. I know it's algebraic because of the letters, right? And I know it means division because of the what?
The fraction.
The fraction bar. Exactly, good. So let's see how this works for you. So what we've got, so here they just did a simpler one. Consider the expression 2r divided by r, okay? Now watch this because I want you to see it's something really important. Okay? Guys, the fraction bar means what operation? Division. So all I'm going to do is take it step by step. The first thing I'm going to do is look to see if there's a sign. But do you see any signs here?
No.
That indicates that they're both positive, so we don't care, right? The second thing I'm going to do is divide the coefficients. But do you notice that there's a number in the top, but is there a number in the bottom? No. So we assume that number, if there is no number, we assume it to be a what? A 1, but it really doesn't matter because 2 divided by 1 is still what? 2. So something divided by nothing, it just stays 2, right? Just stays itself. Now, in the top, the next part I have to deal with is the variable, okay? And my variable in the top is what? R, good. And my variable in the bottom is what? R, good. And so R divided by R is literally something divided by itself. And what does something divided by itself make? 1. Now this is where they would say these two R's cancel. That's a perfectly fine shortcut as long as you know that they're not really canceling. What's really happening is they're turning into a 1. But look up here. How were the 2 and the R connected up in there, here in my original problem? What operation?
Times.
Right. So my answer I get is 2 times 1, which is the same as what? 2. Okay? So even though we divided an R by an R and got a 1, because it's multiplication by 1, you still get the same thing you started with. And that's why it's frequently said that these two things simply cancel. Here's the problem with that. What if I had just R divided by R, and I said they cancel? What do I have left? 0. I have nothing. But is that the correct answer? No. Because really, in reality, R divided by R equals what? 1. Anything divided by itself always equals 1. And that's where cancel can get you into trouble, right? Because anything divided by itself does not equal nothing. It equals what? 1. Yes, ma'am.
What was the fourth step?
The fourth step would be the indices, if you have any. But we didn't have any here, right? Okay? Now, so let's look at some more of these. That's all we're going to be doing is looking at division today. Okay? So, you see that 2R divided by R is just 2. Okay? The R's divide away to make a 1. Let's look at this one. We have a few more terms here. So we have 7x, y, z. Sorry, and I've flipped to the next screen, but I don't want to change back because it's divided by z. First thing I start off with is the sign. Now, I'm going to write these every time because you need to really drill it into your head that it's the instructions that are important, not the problem. But how do you usually learn math? You just look at the problem and see it done, right? But keep in mind that you really should flip that process. Ask yourself the question, then go do the math. Don't try to just do the math and then try to figure out why you're wrong. Okay? So what's the first thing I look for? Signs. But do you notice that they're both positive, so who cares, right? Then the next thing I'm going to do is see if I can divide the which parts? The coefficients. Well, my coefficient here is a 7, and there's not 1 in the bottom, which indicates that it's a 1. And 7 divided by 1 is just plain old what? 7. Right? Be careful when you're dividing. Just divide. 7 divided by 1. Now I can start work on the variables. Here I have an x, and here I have an x. Those are the same, aren't they? So what happens is, when you divide them, they just turn into a 1. And instead of cancel, I like to divide just a big old giant 1 right there. They turned into a 1, didn't they? They didn't turn into a nothing. They turned into a 1. Okay? Right. So, here's a y. Are there any y's in the bottom to divide by? No. So y divided by nothing is just going to stay what? Y. Okay? Yes.
Well, is it because, like, if you go x divided by x, because there are two x's, if it's x divided by x, you just left 1.
Exactly. They turned into a 1.
Instead of, because there's 2 and then 1. So it's like 2 divided by 1, 1.
No, it's anything divided by itself is 1.
Yeah, but that's, yeah.
So anything divided by itself is what you need to be thinking. So here's a z. Is there a z in the bottom?
Yeah.
So z divided by z makes a 1. In other words, and they're gone because we don't need a 1. What we really ended up with was 7 times 1 times y times 1. But remember, we don't want all that junk in algebra. Multiplying that out just makes us have 7y. Be careful. Cancel is very tempting, and that's what they've done here, right? But what if I gave you the problem y divided by y? Did that just cancel?
1.
No. Y divided by y makes a 1. So it'll cost you later. Trust me. And in algebra and trigonometry and calculus, the high school math topics, this is one of the biggest problems students have because they learned how to cancel instead of how to divide. Okay? All right. Let's see what else we got. Okay? All right. So in this expression, we're going to divide. And again, they used cancel, but we're not. Okay? So it's 3a to the second b divided by ab. Okay? Well, this time we have an exponent, right? So we need to be thinking about what that literally means. That literally means that instead of just a, I have 3 times a, how many times? Yeah, twice, right? All divided by a times b. So, pardon? Sure. Okay, now, let's do the division. First, is there a sign?
No.
Both positive, so who cares? Second, divide the coefficients. But the only coefficient I have is 3. So 3 divided by nothing just stays what? Itself. Right, good. And then I need to deal with the variables. Anything divided by itself will make a 1, which I don't need. So a divided by a, those divide away to make a 1. But since I already have a 3, do I need to write a 1 as well? No, because 3 times 1 is still 3. Now then I have another a up there. Is there another a in the bottom to use? Be careful, it's another a in the bottom to use. So that one I've already used. So then that means I'm still going to get an a in my answer. Then I have a b divided by a b. Those are going to divide away and make a what? 1. But do I need to write the 1? No. So 3a is my answer. You should be. Okay? Because if you take it piece by piece, it's very easy. Right? Now, what happens if you don't study this?
You fail.
You don't understand it.
Well, you're going to fail yourself. But what happens is, if you don't study it, what's going to happen is you're not going to remember when to use what rule, right? So you've got to be careful and make sure that you're studying these. Okay. And doing homework is not studying.
This is once we've cancelled.
So, yeah, once we've canceled. I hate that. All right? But I got what we got. Now let's look at this one. We'll do this one together, and then there'll be some that I'm going to have you do. 4fg divided by 2fg to the second power. Now, let's walk through it piece by piece. The tendency is to just jump in and start doing things. That's never a good idea. If I'm going to teach you to swim, I'm not going to take you in a boat and in the harbor and chunk you in and say, here, start doing something, right? Not good. And it's the same thing. So here we go. What's the first thing we look for? Signs. But they're both positive, so my answer is still going to be a positive. So do I need a sign if it's positive? No. Okay? You all following along? Then the next thing I need to do is divide the what? Coefficients. Well, my first number is a 4. Then the bottom, I'm dividing it by what? 2. So what's 4 divided by 2 going to give me? 2. There you go. Good. Then the next thing I need to do is start working on the variables. Guys, there's more than one variable here. So what's f divided by f going to make? 1. But do I need to write the 1? No, because I already have a number there. If I didn't have a number there, I'd have to write the 1. Good. Then I have g in the top, but I have g to the what? Second in the bottom. So that really means g times g, right? So 1g is going to divide away in the top and in the bottom. But what's going to happen to the other one?
You're going to times it by 2.
Can I?
It's just going to be left out.
No, but
Where is the g that's left? It's not in the top, is it? Where is it? So it has to stay in the bottom. We can't suddenly just move things around, right? If there's a g left in the bottom, then that's where it has to stay. So my completed answer is 2 over g.
how do I measure that? What's that called? Like keep left.
No, it just means you did the division and whatever's left is left. And where it's left is where it's left, right? Don't move things around just because you want it to be in the top, right?
I still don't know why we don't use capital letters.
So, lower letters for variables, capital letters for names.
Capitalism isn't good.
Capital letters are made for names, lower letters are for variables. Okay? All right, guys. So there we go. All right. So now we've done multiplication and division. Let's start doing some together. All right? Make sure that the first thing you do is always pay close attention to what operation you're dealing with. If you don't pay close attention to the operation, that should be your first question always. No matter what your question is, it should be what operation? Because you need to remember that in mathematics, we can't just do things as we want to. We have to do them using the order of operations. Exactly. And if you don't know what operations you have, you're not going to be able to do the order of operations, right? So be very careful about making sure you know what you're being asked to do. Then you can also, after you do any multiplication, then you do any what? Addition or subtraction, which in algebra, we don't call addition and subtraction. We call it what? Collecting or combining like terms, right? And remember, C terms and C terms are like terms. C terms and D terms are not like terms, right? We did the lesson on like terms. So now is where we're going to put it all together. Okay? And sometimes there's some extra simplifying, so make sure you check the expression to make sure it's completely done. For example, let's say we did all the math and we ended up with this business. Is that right? No, we're not done, right? So make sure it's simplified all the way. So let's look at a couple. Here's one. We're told to simplify the following expression. Anytime you see that simplify, that word simplify means do the math. In other words, apply the order of operations. So what does the word simplify mean?
Apply the order of operations.
Excellent. So apply the order of operations or do the math. So here we go. We have 10 PQ, and I can't work a problem without rewriting it. I don't know if you can or not, but I don't care. You don't have to, guys. You don't have to rewrite it, but I always rewrite it. Now, you should be writing these on paper, too. And remember, when I look at these assignments, I'm not just going to look at Education Perfect and say you got the right number. I'm going to look at your paper that you turned in and see if that the working was right too. Right? Because I know that, oh my gosh, I didn't get my homework done. Let me see yours so that I can just type in the answers real quick. Or I put it all in my calculator and made my calculator do the work. What'd you just learn? Nothing. Worse than nothing. You learned how to just use a calculator to do your work, right? And a calculator can't do everything. All right, so here we go. Our order of operations says that the first thing I need to look for are what?
Multiplication. No. Brackets.
Brackets or parentheses, whichever you prefer. Do I have any brackets or parentheses? No. What do I look for second?
Exponents.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Exponents. Do I have any?
No.
No. What do I look for next?
Multiplication.
Or what? Division. They really go together, don't they? Multiplication or division. So do you see, first of all, and we do it from left to right, the first thing I have here is what? What operation is that?
Division.
That means division. So that means I need to do it first. Because remember, we do multiplication and division as we come to them from the left to the right. So the division there is the first thing I come to that I need to work. So let's do it. 10 divided by 5 is 2. P divided by nothing just stays what?
Can I just ask what the third piece is?
M or D. Yeah, I wrote M or D because they're really equals, right?
Wait, what does N stand for?
Multiplication. Okay?
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
In a problem that would have.
You don't borrow trouble. Just stick with what we got right now first. Okay? All right. And then we'll talk about it. All right. And Q divided by Q makes what?
1.
Do I need to write a 1 but have I had other stuff there? No. So they're gone. So there's the first division done. What's the next operation I come to? And so am I going to do that yet?
No.
No. So bring it down. What's the next operation I come to?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. So that means I can do that. So I'm going to take first the signs. Positive and a positive are still going to be a positive. 2 times 3 is?
6.
And P times nothing just stays? P. Got it? The one, what's, pardon? Because the order of operations says we do multiplication or division first and then addition or subtraction. Right? Okay. Now, and then that's subtraction, so let's just bring it down. Just go across the line, do all the multiplication and division as you come to them left to right. Now what do I need to do? Addition or subtraction, again from left to what? Right. So the first thing I come to is addition. What is 2P's plus 6P's going to make?
8P.
8P. Excellent. Minus P. I'm going to do it on more than one line. Okay. And now I can do the subtraction. What's 8P's minus P?
6.
Right, because even though if you don't have a number there, you assume it to be a what?
1.
A 1. So 8 minus 1 is going to be 7P. And there is your completed answer. Now, guys, I'm thinking that you need to really slow down. And I know there's a little pressure in class because you want to hurry up and you want to be the one to answer. So be careful of that, though. That's perfectly acceptable. I love the enthusiasm. I like it when students really want to work with it. But make sure you slow down and think through the process. That's the important. Remember that mathematics is not about speed. It's about accuracy. I don't care how fast you get the answer. I want you to get the right answer. Okay? Excellent. Okay, let's look at another. They worked out the problem for you, piece by piece. Here we go. Simplify the following expression. You have 1 minute.
Can't read the board.
You can't? Okay. It's 6C plus 6C plus C divided by 2C.
Can we have more than 1 minute?
Yeah, maybe, because I didn't bring my phone for a timer anyway.
6C plus 6C divided by...
Okay? So, first things first. I'm told to simplify. That means apply the order of operations, right? In other words, do the math. So in the order of operations, the first thing I look for is what? Brackets. Do you have any? No. What do you look for next? Do you have any?
No.
Yeah, don't have index in either one, right? Third, you're going to do either multiplication or what?
Division.
From the left to the right. So the first thing I have is a plus. So is that multiplication or division? No. Then I have another plus. Is that multiplication or division? No. Then, though, I have the fraction bar. Does that mean multiply or divide?
Yeah.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is just bring down the 6c and the other 6c. Do not combine them yet, even though you know they're like terms. Do the things in order, because later it could make a huge difference if you did them out of order. This one, it didn't make such a giant difference, but later it will. So in the top, so I have to do the sign, so they're both positive. So that means I'm going to get a positive number, right? I have no number in the top, do I? So what do I assume that number to be?
1.
And 1 divided by 2 is what?
2. 1.
Minus half.
I've got no idea.
It's half.
1 divided by 2
It's half.
is 1/2. 2 divided by 1 is 2, but 1 divided by 2 is 1/2.
Whoa, that's smart. It's smart.
Well, you just do the C times just C divided by C, and then that's
Remember, I just walked through the steps. It's sine, then what?
Oh, sine, then coefficient.
Then coefficient and variable when?
Third.
There you go. Do you see the importance of the rules? You can't just jump in and do what you want to do, right? So here we go. And then finally here, C divided by C makes what? Well, 1, but do I need to write the 1? No, because I have the 1/2 there already, right? Okay. Now, the fourth step is either to do addition or what?
subtraction.
And here's some addition. So I have 6c plus 6c. Are 6c and 6c like terms? Yes, therefore they can be combined. So it's just going to be 6c's plus 6 more c's makes what? 12c's. Excellent. Not 12c squared, because I'm not multiplying, right? And then here's another addition, but I'm adding 1/2. Can I add 1/2 to 12c?
Yeah. You got 12.5 now.
No, because that's a c and that's a constant. So my completed answer is what?
12C
Plus 1/2. Okay? Be careful. Don't forget things you already know. 1 divided by 2 is not 2. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2, right? That's straight arithmetic. You know that. Okay? All right. So be careful with those. All right, let's go through our...
What was the answer?
The answer was 12c plus 1/2.
Oh, okay.
Got it? Okay. Ta-da! The finish line. Don't you love it? Let's review. I'm missing the sloth a little bit, but oh well.
I missed the sloth.
Well, yeah, but you're going to practice it, and that make it work. So you've got the rules. Follow the rules. And one thing you can do, guys, listen. I know that not all of us are as strong as students as everybody else, right? We all have different abilities. Some of us can play an instrument. Some of us can sing.
No.
I can't sing. I can't play an instrument. I run like a girl. So, oh, wait a minute. That's a wrong thing to say in here, isn't it? Got your attention, though, didn't I? All right. So, anyway, I have some skills. I don't have other skills. I don't have math skills. Math is not my strong suit. But here's what I've learned to do to overcome it. If I'm doing a problem, I say, okay, I know the first thing I need to do is look for the sign. The second thing I need to do is multiply or divide or whatever the coefficients. The third thing I need to do, in other words, I memorize the rules, and while I'm learning something, I write them down while I'm doing the problem. Okay, hold on just a second. So, listen to me, guys. If you know that you're having trouble with a specific topic, as you work the problem, write down the directions. You have your notes to use when you're doing your homework, right? So don't just read your notes and then do it. Write it down as you go, because you need to get it off of the paper and into where?
Your head.
Your head, exactly.
Your head hole.
All right? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
So you're not good at math, you say?
No.
What are you good at? English?
I like to eat.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I love history. History's my thing. Okay, all right, let's finish this up. Okay, so first we learned how to simplify. Hey, guys, we learned how to simplify expressions involving multiplication. We can multiply, we do the sign, we multiply the constants, and then we can multiply bases that are the same, right? Okay, then we learned how to simplify involving division. We can divide away the things that are the same. They don't technically cancel. They really make ones, but you don't need to write the one if you have something else. Then we learned how to put everything together using the order of operations. And some of you are, say it, guys, some of you are shaky with that. All right? So put it together. And no lesson would be complete without a kitten.
I want a cat now.
Okay.
My God.
Okay?